Hey guys, on today's video we're going to look at setting up the S13 suspension wise and alignment wise. So first up, we're going to show you guys how to set up bump travel and set up your coilovers to get the correct ride height. There's a few different ways you can do it, but we're going to show you the right way to do it. But first up, we've gotten the car on the hoist straight after the last round of the state series, and we've noticed an issue with this side, so we had a bit of a hit, as you can see all the red on here. And then we've noticed that when you give the wheel a bit of a wobble, you can feel side to side play. So I'm going to show you how to diagnose that and what the issue is that we've found. So basically, if you give the wheel a bit of a wobble and you can feel a bit of movement in it, you want to find what is actually moving, and then if you say your tire end staying still or whatever, as you can see here, try and get the camera in a bit closer. See, when we wobble the wheel, that's moving up here, but this isn't moving there. So that's where your play is. So what we're going to do before we start anything is we're going to get that replaced and then get it roughly close to where it is before we set it up for the alignment. Alright, got that all swapped over, so that's better now. Now we're going to look at setting the bump travel. So on the rear I had some other shitty wheels. They're only like 9-inch wide wheels. Now I've put these 10-inch ones. I think they're plus 22 or something, so the most aggressive wheel I have. That way when we set up the bump travel, it's to the wheel that's going to hit stuff first, rather than setting it up with a smaller wheel that's not going to hit on the guard and stuff like that, and then putting these on and then it hits on everything. Alright, so we're going to show you how to set your bump travel, and we're going to show you how to set your ride height as well. So how would you normally adjust your ride height with aftermarket coilovers?
So the way I've normally done it is you loosen off this bottom collar and twist up the base height adjustable and lower it or heighten it to where you want.
So that is how most people do it, but actually it's the wrong way. So what you're doing there is you're adjusting your bump travel. So it'll give you a very poor quality ride if you just slam your car from there, because it'll basically just end up on hitting on everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the spring out, and then we're going to adjust the bump travel until it's hitting on something. So we're going to make sure the bump stop hits before the wheel hits onto any part of the chassis or whatever. And then we're going to set the ride height with the spring. But then you might say we're putting preload on the spring, blah blah blah, all the different things with that. But these are linear springs, so it doesn't matter how much preload you have on the spring, they will still be the same tension. So these are 6 kilo springs, so it doesn't matter how tight you have these bad boys. Every millimeter to compress it, you need 6 kilos of force. So we can have this basically almost half that, and it will still take the same amount of force to compress that. Basically it does that all the way until the spring is fully compressed. So anyway, it's pretty hard for me to explain it through words. I'll just get into it and show you. Alright, so now we've got the coilovers out of the car. Might be a bit easier to explain what I was talking about. So normally when you try and adjust the height of a car, you would undo this collar, wind this up in the thread in there, and that would bring your pickup point that goes onto the knuckle up or down, which it will raise and lower the height of your car, but all that is doing is adjusting your bump travel. So if you wind this all the way down low, it's basically just gonna, once the spring's at full compression, it's just gonna hit on everything. So we're going to take this apart and we're going to show you how to set up your coilovers, and we're going to set up the ride height with the spring. Alright, so all we've done there is taken off the top hat and then remove the spring, and then we're going to reinstall the coilover into the car and then check our bump travel, and then we're going to adjust accordingly. Left the bump stop in so we can see the actual travel we've got with the shock. I've just taken the dust cover off so that we can actually see in here and how much travel the shaft actually has. Alright, so we've just bolted the coilover back in without the spring on it. I don't know if you can see that. And we're going to adjust for the bump travel. So basically what we're doing is we're going to lower the car, which is pretty handy because we've got a remote, or not a remote, whatever you call this, corded blinger, so we can let the car up and down. So we're going to let that down, and then we're going to see when the actual bump stop does its job. So that's hitting on the guard, which I'm not too fussed about. Still going down. That looks like it might be on the bump stop now, but we'll have to get underneath and have a look.
No,
So
doesn't feel like it.
it's not hitting on the bump stop yet. There's a bit of room for movement. It's a bit hard to get in there and see.
It's purely based on feeling.
Let's have a look. That's pretty close, but the other problem we got is we're hitting on the subframe with the toe arms, which is why I keep bending them. Same, well, this side looks like it's just free. This side hitting on the bump stop. Yeah, so that side's hitting on the bump stop. And we're free on the toe arm here, but that's because this one is bent downwards a little bit. So this one's definitely hitting. We need to address that. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the bottom adjuster to change the bump travel so that the bump stop hits before we foul on here. So that way the bump stop will be the limiting factor rather than at the moment the toe arms are the limiting factor hitting on there and they're bending. So I think the actual wheel is not hitting up in the wheel arch or anything like that. That all looks pretty free. Up the top there. Jump out here and have a look. See, I've got plenty of room up there in the wheel arch. The only thing that's really hitting is the guards, but it kind of cambers in as it goes up, and they're only fiberglass guards which flex anyway, so I'm not too fussed about that. But definitely the toe arms we need to fix up because that is why I'm bending them. So it's clear as this guard anyway, so that's alright, but we're going to raise that travel up so that we're not hitting on the toe arms. Alright, so what I'm going to do is we're going to adjust this side, which is the problem side, and then realistically we don't really need to do too much to that side, but I'm going to make it the same as this side so that if I adjust these toe arms which are bent, then I'm going to have the full clearance I need, because this one was bent down, but from when I've adjusted it, it's bent up now, which is almost looks straightish, but you can see a little bit of a curve upwards. So that is the limiting factor at the moment. So all we do is I've undone this collar here, and then basically adjust it like you would to change the height. But what we're doing now is changing the bump travel. So I'm going to go down, say 20 mil, and then I'm going to put the wheel back on, and then we're going to test that again, and then we'll match up the other side to what this side is, the length between here to here. Length between here to here. Make that the same, this side to that side. Alright, so I've adjusted both sides up by about 10 mil, and what I'm doing is I'm measuring from the bottom collar here with the ruler to the top of the thread up here, and I've got both sides to 180 mil. Before they're at 170. So then what I'm going to do now is chuck the wheels back on and lower it down until it hits the bump stops, and double check that we're not hitting on anything. Probably an easier way to see how bent these toe arms are from this angle here. So that's been adjusted around that way and it's bent that way. That's why it's not hitting on here. Whereas if I span that around, so that was upwards, that would definitely hit on there. So I'm gonna have to get some new toe arms regardless, but we'll see how far we get with these ones. Alright, so we're gonna test again. Now we've adjusted the bump travel about 10 mil. See what the limiting factor is now. So that's all the way down. This side we didn't really have an issue with, so we'll go around the other side and have a look. So our toe arm's still hitting, so we're going to have to go again and wind her up another 10 mil. Alright, so we've lowered it another 10 mil now, so now we're at 190 mil. That was the wrong button. So we're at 190 mil now. We're going to lower it down again and see what the limiting factor is now. So back over to the other side. See if that toe arm's still hitting. Looks like it's just clearing now. Might just be hitting on that bolt. So I might go another 5 mil and then test it out again. Alright, so now we're at 200 mil from the base height collar to the top of the thread. And we're going to lower it down and make sure it's not hitting on the toe arm. So let's have a gander. We've got a bit of clearance there, which is good. And we're not hitting on anything else. We've got plenty of room up in the tub there. And even on the guard there's a bit of room, so plenty of room up in here. So that's our bump travel set. And now when we put the spring back in, the car's going to be super high. So what we're going to have to do is adjust to our required ride height with actually adjusting the spring on the spring perch. So we'll get the springs back in and we'll show you how to do that. Alright, so now we've got it back in with the bump travel set and the spring back in at the same spot that it was on the perch before. So I imagine it's going to be super high now. So we'll chuck it down and have a look.
Wow.
That's all the way down, so that's super high. So I just want to put a note in here that when Shockworks sent me the coilovers a couple of years back, they sent them to me probably pretty well set up, and then me being me, I just wanted to slam it, so all I did was the base height, slammed it straight up, and now we're at this issue. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lower the spring perch, and we're going to use that to lower the car a bit, so that way when it does run out of travel, it's going to hit the bump stop and not the toe arm, and will hopefully stop bending toe arms. So alright, so all I've done is I've undone the locking collar, which is this one here, set that one loose, and then I've undone this one down about 30 mil, so we can hopefully lower it about 30 mil. Now the spring is not captive now, but when the car has the weight of the car on it, that'll become captive. What you can do is you can get a helper spring, which will keep that captive, but in this case we're going to try it without and see how it goes. We're not doing any super big jumps, so should hopefully be alright. I'm going to chuck the wheels back on and see what sort of height it's sitting at. It's only going to be a rough sort of height because the front's still up in the air, so it's not sitting dead flat. So we're not going to get our final height until we've messed around with the front as well. And then, yeah, we'll be changing heights a little bit when we do the corner weighting as well. So this is just a rough guide to roughly where we want it to sit for now, and then we'll play around with that in the next video. Wheels back on, and we'll send her down and see where she sits. Check the other side. About the same. Probably could go a little bit lower, but we'll leave it at that height for now, and then play around with the front and see how we go. So we've just done the same thing with the front. We've just removed the spring, and all we've done to do that is the top bolt, or not bolt, top nut on the top of the coilover. Undone that. That'll have the wheel off so there's not too much weight on there. That'll drop it down, then you can pull it out to the side, pull the spring off, and then put it back together. So we're going to lower it down and see, same sort of thing as the rear, see when the bump stop hits, and then adjust it to suit. But we're going to have to move the jacks around, so we can put one jack under the control arms to move the car up and down, and then another jack underneath it to take the weight of the car. That way we can turn the wheel to full lock and see, while it's turning at the same time, what is the first thing that's hitting. So we'll chuck it down now and then move the jacks around. That's a better height. Never been so low in its life. Doing an endo now.
Alrighty, so we've rearranged where the jacks are. So we've got the back jack moved forward to the chassis rails, and we've put the blocks on the jack on the control arm so that we can lift it up and test it on full lock, see where it's hitting first, whether it's going to, yeah, see where it hits first, pretty much. So we're lifting up the jack on the control arm to put it under compression, so we're hitting where the bump stop is. And by the looks of it, we are hitting
Something.
Is it on the other side?
Oh yeah, maybe on the jack. Yep.
Yep. Alright, that was a botched idea.
Alright, let's rearrange the jack and start again. We've done some adjusting and we found out these more than likely have an internal bump stop. So it's a bit hard to set it up by sort of seeing it. But what we're doing is adjusting it and then sort of lowering the weight of the car onto it and then seeing where it stops. And then that way we can adjust and then get it to where, basically I think the limiting factor is going to be the back of the tunnel in here, which is a bit hard to see. But on full lock, that's the closest bit up the back here. Let's see. Right up the back here, so we haven't got much room there. So I'm going to wind it down a little bit more by winding the thread here down into the base height adjustable bit, and then we're going to adjust where the actual internal stop stops when it's really close to hitting there, so it hits the internal bump stop before it hits the chassis over here. Alright, so we've raised the bump stop up a bit. Now I'm going to drop her down and see where she sits. Oh, that's up. Now, close. Still got a little bit of room there. It's actually getting closer in this edge. Over here. But we can still get our hand in there, so we might go down another 5-10 mil. But we'll just quickly check the other side first. Whoa, this side's close to the guard. And it's pretty close in there actually as well. So I reckon that's probably about where we'll leave it there. If we were to go any further down on full lock and compression, if we set the bump stop any higher, that's going to destroy the guard. So at least at that height, with the bump stop there, it's going to hit the bump stop. And it's not going to hit the guard, so it's not going to destroy that, because one tap of that tyre, this fiberglass guard is gone. So that's done for our bump stop height, and now we'll chuck it all back together and set our spring height.
Alrighty, what are we doing?
Now we have the springs back in at the same height they were before, but our bump travel adjusted slightly. So now we're going to go down with the hoist and see where we're sitting. And that's super high. So we're going to adjust the spring down a bit and get that a little bit lower. I do like to run the front a little bit higher than the rear, just to put a little bit more weight transferred to the rear, especially when it's squatting down. It'll squat down, the front will sort of stay relatively high. It looks like shit. And a lot of people give me shit, say my car looks like shit, but it has heaps more grip and drives a lot better that way. And yeah, but recently I've had the front a little bit lower than I normally do, and we're going to see how we go this time. Might run it a little bit lower this time, but yeah, we'll adjust that with the spring.
To be fair, I don't think it's the ride height is the only thing that they call it shit for.
Alright. Drop the spring down a fair bit. Let's see where we're at now. Exactly the same height. Is that the same height?
I think it's a little lower.
Let's put it back up and wind down again. What's that side look like? Same?
Side looks good, but I don't know what you want.
Alright, that's it for today and setting up coilovers and ride height. For the next video, we will end up corner weighting it, which will probably adjust the ride height slightly. But this is basically roughly the height it's going to sit at, so a little bit lower in the rear than the front. Normally have the front a little bit higher, but we'll see how this goes on the corner weight scales. And then if front to rear isn't as good as I like it, I might raise the front a bit. But yeah, we'll do cross weights, all that, and yeah, if you want to see that, make sure you watch the next video. And yeah, hope you learnt something, because I learnt a little bit and would be good to use in the future. Anyway, bye.